Bullies push quiet girl downstairs, but they had no idea she was a secret fighter. An inspiring story by Heartfelt Tales. Maya Chen had always been invisible. She moved through Jefferson High like a shadow, her oversized sweater hiding her small frame, her long black hair creating a curtain between herself and the world. While other students laughed loudly in the hallways and formed tight circles of friendship, Maya walked alone, clutching her worn backpack and keeping her eyes fixed on the ground. She preferred it that way, or at least that's what she told herself every morning when she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, practicing the art of disappearing. If this story moves you, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories that touch the soul. But invisibility, Maya would soon learn, was no protection against cruelty. The bully boys, as they called themselves, ruled the second-floor hallway with an iron fist and empty hearts. Jake Morrison, their leader, stood 6 feet tall with shoulders like a linebacker and a smile that never reached his eyes. His followers, Tyler and Brett, fed off his energy like parasites, their laughter echoing through the corridors whenever they found a new target to torment. Maya first caught their attention on a Tuesday morning in October. She was hurrying to her advanced physics class, her arms full of textbooks, when she accidentally bumped into Jake at his locker. The books scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, and for a moment, the hallway fell silent. "Watch where you're going, freak," Jake sneered, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet corridor. Maya quickly knelt to gather her books, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. But as she reached for her physics textbook, Jake's heavy boot came down on her fingers. The pain shot through her hand like electricity, but Maya bit her lip, refusing to give him the satisfaction of hearing her cry out. "I said watch it," Jake repeated, pressing harder. Maya looked up then, and for just a moment, Jake saw something flicker in her dark eyes, something that made him pause. But the moment passed, and Maya pulled her hand free, gathered her books, and disappeared into the crowd. From that day forward, Maya became the bully boys' favorite target. They would knock her books from her hands, shove her into lockers, and whisper cruel names as she passed. The teachers, overwhelmed with their own responsibilities, seemed to look the other way. Maya's parents, busy with their restaurant business, noticed the bruises but believed her explanations about being clumsy. She was truly alone in her suffering. What none of them knew was that Maya Chen carried secrets deeper than her silence. Every evening after school, while her classmates went to soccer practice or hung out at the mall, Maya descended into the basement of Chen's Golden Dragon restaurant. There, surrounded by the smell of ginger and soy sauce drifting down from the kitchen above, she transformed. The basement housed her grandfather's legacy, a complete martial arts training facility that hadn't been used since his death 5 years earlier. Wooden training dummies stood like silent sentinels, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of practice. Heavy bags hung from reinforced ceiling beams, and mirrors lined one wall, reflecting the determination in Maya's eyes as she trained. Master Chen had been a legend in his homeland, a practitioner of Wing Chun who had fled to America with nothing but his skills and his dreams. He had tried to teach Maya when she was younger, but after his death, her parents had focused solely on keeping the restaurant afloat. They saw his teachings as relics of the past, not tools for the future. But Maya remembered every lesson, every kata, every breathing technique her grandfather had shown her. In the solitude of that basement, she practiced religiously, her small frame moving with fluid precision through forms that had been perfected over centuries. She wasn't training to fight, she was training to survive, to find strength in a world that seemed determined to break her spirit. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in November. Maya was walking up the main staircase to her locker when she heard the familiar sound of the bully boys' laughter echoing from above. She paused, considering taking the long way around, but she was already late for her literature class. She had a presentation that day on Emily Dickinson. How fitting, she thought, given her own preference for solitude. As Maya climbed the stairs, her wet sneakers squeaked against the linoleum. The sound seemed to announce her presence to Jake, Tyler, and Brett, who were standing at the top of the staircase like gargoyles guarding a castle. Well, Jake said, his voice dripping with mock surprise. If it isn't our favorite little mouse. Where are you scurrying off to now? Maya tried to move past them, but Tyler stepped into her path. Jake asked you a question, he said, his breath smelling of energy drinks and malice. I need to get to class, Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was one of the few times any of them had heard her speak, and the sound seemed to fuel their cruelty. Oh, she speaks. Brett laughed, clapping his hands mockingly. What else can the little mouse do? Maya tried again to move past them, but Jake grabbed her backpack, pulling her backward. Not so fast, he said. I think it's time someone taught you your place in the food chain. What happened next would be replayed in Maya's mind for years to come. Jake's hands made contact with her shoulders, and she felt herself being pushed backward. Time seemed to slow as she lost her balance, her body tilting toward the staircase behind her. The bully boys were laughing, thinking they were simply giving her a little shove, a harmless prank to amuse themselves. But Maya was falling, really falling, down 15 concrete steps that could easily break bones or worse. In that moment of weightlessness, with the laughter of her tormentors ringing in her ears, something inside Chen awakened. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, in Wing Chun, we do not fight against force. We redirect it. We become like water, fluid, adaptable, unstoppable. Instead of flailing helplessly, Maya's body moved with practiced precision. She tucked into a controlled fall, using the momentum to her advantage rather than fighting against it. Her years of training kicked in automatically, she rolled with the impact, distributing the force across her body, turning what should have been a devastating tumble into a series of controlled movements. She landed at the bottom of the stairs in a crouch, her hand touching the floor for balance, her eyes focused and alert. A small crowd had gathered, expecting to see a broken, sobbing girl. Instead, they saw Chen rise to her feet with the grace of a dancer and the presence of a warrior. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake, Tyler, and Brett stood at the top of the stairs, their mouths hanging open in shock. They had expected screams, tears, maybe even an ambulance. They had not expected Maya to stand up, brush the dust from her clothes, and look up at them with eyes that held no fear. Is that all? Maya asked, her voice carrying clearly through the stairwell. It was the first time she had spoken loudly in school, and her words seemed to echo off the walls with newfound power. For the first time in their reign of terror, the bully boys were speechless. They had pushed her down a flight of stairs, a girl half their size, and she had not only survived but stood there looking at them as if they were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But Maya's challenges were far from over. Word of the incident spread through the school like wildfire, but not in the way she had hoped. Some students whispered that she was tougher than she looked, but others began to spread rumors that she was some kind of freak, that her survival of the fall was somehow unnatural. The bully boys, humiliated by their failure to break her, began to plot something worse. Jake's pride had been wounded in front of the entire school, and he was determined to regain his reputation. He began to spread vicious rumors about Maya, turning her moment of strength into something sinister in the minds of her classmates. The isolation that Maya had once chosen became a prison imposed upon her by others. Students who might have reached out to her before now crossed the street to avoid her. Teachers began to look at her with suspicion, wondering what other secrets the quiet girl might be hiding. Maya's parents finally noticed that something was wrong when she came home with torn clothes and a split lip from an encounter with the bully boys behind the school. When they pressed her for answers, the whole story came tumbling out: months of abuse, the fall down the stairs, and her growing reputation as the school's resident outcast. That evening, Maya sat in the basement training facility, her grandfather's picture watching over her as she worked through her forms. Her parents had wanted to call the school, to demand action, but Maya had begged them not to. She knew that involving adults would only make things worse, turning her from a target into a snitch. As she moved through the ancient patterns her grandfather had taught her, Maya realized that she faced a choice. She could continue to hide, to let the bully boys and their cruelty define her existence, or she could stand up, not just for herself, but for every student who had ever felt powerless in the face of bullying. The decision came to her as she performed the final movement of her evening routine, her body perfectly balanced, her mind crystal clear. She would not seek out confrontation, but she would no longer run from it either. The next day, Maya walked into school with her head held high for the first time in months. She wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans instead of her usual oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that revealed the determined set of her jaw. The final confrontation came at lunchtime. Maya was sitting alone in the cafeteria, eating the sandwich her mother had packed for her, when the bully boys approached her table. But this time, something was different. Jake's usual swagger seemed forced, and Tyler and Brett kept glancing nervously at the other students who were watching. "Think you're pretty special, don't you?" Jake said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Everyone's talking about your little stunt on the stairs." Maya looked up at him calmly, chewing her sandwich before she replied. "I'm not special," she said. "I just refuse to break." Jake's face flushed with anger. "We'll see about that," he snarled, reaching out to grab her by the shirt. What happened next took less than 5 seconds, but it would be remembered by everyone in that cafeteria for the rest of their lives. Maya moved with fluid precision, redirecting Jake's grab and using his own momentum against him. She didn't strike him, she simply guided his energy until he found himself off balance, stumbling backward into his friends. When Tyler tried to rush forward to help Jake, Maya was ready. A simple sidestep and a gentle push sent him tumbling over an empty chair. Brett, seeing his friends on the ground and Maya standing calmly in the center of it all, decided that discretion was the better part of valor and backed away with his hands raised. The entire cafeteria erupted in cheers and applause, not for violence, but for justice finally being served. Students who had been too afraid to speak up against the bully boys suddenly found their voices, sharing stories of their own encounters with Jake and his friends. In the weeks that followed, Maya's life at Jefferson High transformed completely. The girl who had once been invisible became a beacon of hope for other students facing similar struggles. She started a self-defense club that met in the school gym after hours, teaching her classmates not just physical techniques, but the mental strength that came from knowing you could protect yourself. Jake, Tyler, and Brett found themselves facing consequences for the first time in their high school careers. Without their reputation for intimidation, they were revealed as what they truly were, insecure teenagers who had used cruelty to mask their own fears. Some of them, surprisingly, even approached Maya months later to apologize, genuinely wanting to change. Maya's relationship with her parents also deepened as they came to understand the strength their daughter had found in their family's traditions. They began to share more stories about her grandfather, and the restaurant's basement became a gathering place for students who wanted to learn not just martial arts, but the philosophy of respect and inner strength that came with it. But perhaps the most important change was in Maya herself. She learned that true strength wasn't about being invisible or invulnerable, it was about choosing when to bend and when to stand firm, when to remain silent and when to speak up. She discovered that her quiet nature wasn't a weakness to be hidden but a source of power that allowed her to listen, observe, and understand the world around her in ways that louder voices often missed. The girl who had once walked through the halls like a shadow now moved with purpose, her presence felt not because she demanded attention, but because she had learned to respect herself. Students began to seek her out for advice, teachers recognized her wisdom, and Maya found herself becoming the kind of person she had always admired, someone who made others feel stronger simply by being around them. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident on the stairs, Maya stood at the top of that same staircase during lunch break. A group of younger students had gathered around her, all of them part of her self-defense club, all of them learning that they were stronger than they knew. "The most important lesson my grandfather taught me," Maya told them, "wasn't how to fight. It was how to find peace within myself." When you know who you are and what you're capable of, bullies lose their power over you. They can push you down, but they can't keep you down unless you let them. One of the younger girls, a freshman who reminded Maya of herself, raised her hand tentatively. "But what if you're scared?" she asked. "What if you feel like you're not strong enough?" Maya smiled, remembering her own fears, her own doubts. "Fear is normal," she said. "I was terrified every day for months. But fear doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. The courage isn't in not being afraid. It's in choosing to do the right thing even when you are afraid." As the bell rang and the students dispersed to their afternoon classes, Maya remained at the top of the stairs for a moment longer. She thought about the girl she had been a year ago, silent, isolated, convinced that invisibility was her only protection. That girl would hardly recognize the person Maya had become, not because she was louder or more aggressive, but because she had learned to value herself. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been days when the old fears crept back in, moments when she questioned whether she was strong enough to help others when she was still learning to help herself. But each challenge had taught her something new about resilience, about the difference between being quiet and being silenced, between being small and being overlooked. Maya had learned that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power, not because they shout the loudest, but because they speak the deepest truths. She had discovered that strength comes not from never falling, but from always getting back up. Most importantly, she had realized that every person has the capacity to be a fighter, not in the sense of physical combat, but in the daily battle to remain true to themselves in a world that often demands conformity. As Maya walked to her advanced physics class, the same class she had been rushing to on that fateful October morning, she reflected on how much had changed. She was still the same person who loved Emily Dickinson poetry and preferred small gatherings to large crowds. She still found peace in solitude and strength in silence. But now she also knew that when the moment demanded it, she could step forward, speak up, and stand her ground. The bully boys had thought they were pushing down a weak, defenseless girl. Instead, they had awakened a fighter who would spend the rest of her high school years, and beyond, helping others discover their own inner strength. Maya Chen had learned that the most powerful weapon against bullying wasn't fists or harsh words, but the unshakable knowledge that every person deserves respect, starting with the respect they show themselves. Her story became legend at Jefferson High, not because of the dramatic fall down the stairs or the confrontation in the cafeteria, but because of what came after, the quiet revolution of students learning to stand up for themselves and each other, the transformation of a school culture from one of fear to one of mutual support, and the simple but profound truth that sometimes the most unexpected people become the heroes we all need. Maya's legacy lived on in every student who found their voice, every act of kindness that replaced cruelty, and every young person who learned that being different wasn't something to hide but something to celebrate. The quiet girl had become a fighter, not by changing who she was, but by embracing everything she had always been and refusing to let anyone else define her worth. Years later, when Maya looked back on her high school experience, she wouldn't remember the pain of those early months of bullying as much as she would remember the moment she chose to rise. Because that's what fighters do, they get knocked down, they feel the pain, they acknowledge the fear, and then they stand back up, stronger and more determined than before. The bully boys had pushed the quiet girl down the stairs, never imagining that she was a fighter. But Maya had always been a fighter, she just hadn't known it yet. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything, the moment when we stop seeing ourselves through the eyes of those who would diminish us and start seeing ourselves as we truly are, powerful, valuable, and absolutely unbreakable. Thank you for watching this powerful story of resilience and inner strength. Maya's journey reminds us that every person has untapped potential within them, waiting for the right moment to emerge. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us reach more people who might need to hear this message. Share your own thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever discovered hidden strength within yourself during a difficult time? Your story might inspire someone else who's going through their own challenges. Don't forget to share this video with friends who might find hope in Maya's transformation, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories that celebrate the human spirit. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Together, we can create a community where everyone feels empowered to embrace their inner fighter. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more capable than you imagine.